being here. I am so excited to chat with all of you. My name is Katya Joseph. I am a lady of justice with Legal Shield, and I am excited to have all of you guys on and joining us for our virtual will workshop. Now, let's set the pace from right now as we jump into this information. I am not an attorney. I'm not an attorney. I just have the honor, the pleasure, the privilege of working with AV rated attorneys throughout the entire nation with our company. And so, for the next few minutes that we're together, our conversation is going to be about estate planning, will preparation. I want to answer questions that you guys have. I'm going to go over stats and some of the reasons why we have avoided this conversation in the past, and of course, the information that you need to know in order for you to complete your last will and testament. Now, I know that we may have a mixed crowd on here. If you guys can just do me a favor before we get started, if you're familiar with Zoom and you know how to use the chat feature, if you can go to the chat feature and just type in the number one, just so I have an idea of who's familiar, so I can know how much interaction I can get while we're on here. And I'm going to do the same thing, so I'll get it started. Um, there we go. All right, awesome. I see someone's coming up in the chat. Fantastic. So, um, while you guys are doing that, just know that the chat feature, you guys are more than welcome to use that to ask questions. Some of you guys registered via Eventbrite and I received your questions there. So thank you guys. And I'm going to do my best to share and answer all the questions that I possibly can. Now, again, I'm not an attorney. I'm a lady of justice with Legal Shield, and will preparation is one of many services that we provide. For any of you guys that are unfamiliar with us and who we are and what we do, we've been around now for almost 50 years, and we just work with the best attorneys in the nation to provide our members with affordable access to attorneys. So no longer does it have to break your bank to get things like your will and things like that done. So I'll break that down also a little bit later. Some of you guys may be Legal Shield members, and so you want to knock this out. Some of you guys may be hearing about us for the first time. Either way, I'm going to make sure to speak to everyone as I jump into the information, okay? So I'm going to make sure that I have the chat up in case you guys do have questions for me. And let's jump in to the information. First things first, why are we even here? Why are we having this conversation? Well, family, I know for me, growing up, I did not have the conversation with loved ones about estate planning or will preparation specifically. I'm first generation Haitian American, and I want to start off there because you guys may be like me. Maybe this is the first time you're having an open conversation about protecting your loved ones in this way, in this capacity. And I don't want for you to feel bad about that. The reality is that over 50% of Americans don't have their will done. Okay. So it's more folks that don't know and don't have it done than folks that do. But the more we have this conversation, my hope is that we can change that completely. Now, it's over 5 out of 10 Americans that don't have their will done. It's 7 out of 10 minorities that don't have their estate planning in order. And I think a large part of that is from miseducation, right? So, again, for me, I'm first generation Haitian American. The way that estate planning works in Haiti is very different than the way that it works here in the States. I don't blame my parents for not having this conversation with me. Their parents didn't have the conversation with them, right? But when we know better, we get to do better. So I want to dispel some of the myths and the places for us in the past that maybe were uncomfortable, or the conversations that we avoided because of the misnomers, and maybe something that somebody said to us about estate planning that we ran with, and it may actually not be true. Okay. And so we're going to discuss the perception that we have about estate planning versus the reality, and what the law actually is, what it says, and why it's so important. Because we're going to be discussing not just will preparation, but different portions of estate planning, right? The things that happen when we're incapacitated, living wills, and things along those lines. But all of you that know how to use the chat feature, I'm going to ask for you guys to do this. If I read off a perception, and you've either A, said it yourself, or B, heard someone in your life say it. Maybe it was a family member, a neighbor, maybe you've heard them say any of these perceptions, then just do me a favor and put the number 2 in the chat as I go through these perceptions. And the reason I'm saying that is because I want for us to know that we're not alone as we have this conversation. We're not pointing fingers, we're just talking about the truth. Okay. So, the first perception I hear often from folks in the community is that they don't need to have a will because they want everything to go to their kids. There's no reason for them to have their will done. Everything's going to get passed down anyway. If you ever heard that or said that, go ahead and put a 2 in the chat. Okay, right? So it's not just me, as long as we're clear here. Um, Even now, I hear this from family members, and I do will workshops all the time. Everything's going to get passed down. It's fine. Well, here's the reality, okay? Regardless of whether you're like me in the state of New York, or you are in California, or you are in Texas, okay? If you don't have a will in place, you're leaving all the decisions regarding your estate to the state that you're in. Well, Katya, what exactly does that mean? Well, every state has their own laws of descent. Okay. They have their own laws of descent. That means that they have laws in place that decide who's going to receive what when you don't have a will in place. And so there are some states where automatically the state gets half of everything before family members even get to touch anything. All right. As an example, for anybody who is in New York like I am, if you have a spouse, then automatically your spouse, if you have kids as well, your spouse gets half of anything it is that you own before your kids get, whether you like your spouse or not. Okay. And so I just point that out as an example. We don't realize, right? And for us, we would say, well, it makes sense, right? The kids would get it first. Well, unfortunately, family, the law isn't logical, it's legal. And so the things that make sense to us aren't necessarily what's in place. Okay. And excuse me 1 second. I have somebody that is having issues getting on. I always get messages after we get started. Definitely want to make sure everyone has access to the information. So that's the first perception. Okay, family. Now, put a 2 in the chat if you guys have ever said or heard someone say, my family members are going to take the kids. It's fine. I don't need to have a will in place. Um, there's no reason for me to document it because my loved ones are going to step in. They got this covered. We're good to go. Once again, it's not just you. All right. I'm going to go ahead and put my 2 in the chat as well. I've heard this over and over again. And this has actually made me worried because I think about myself. I told you guys I'm Haitian. American. If there's nothing else, I can say this because I am Haitian. We know how to procreate. Okay. I have family everywhere. And so, with that, which family members are going to take the kids? But, family, here's the reality. If you do not legally appoint a guardian, right, a custodian, someone to take care of your kids, then the court is going to appoint one instead. And it may not be the person that you think should be responsible for your kids. Well, Katya, what do you mean by that? Well, think about it this way. For anyone on here with kids or anyone on here that plans to have kids even in the future, um, we put a bare minimum, right? 18 years of blood, sweat, and tears into raising our loved ones. And with that 18 years that we're putting in, well, who's going to put the same amount of care, right? TLC that we do? Who's going to make sure that they eat their vegetables before they have dessert? Who's going to make sure that they finish their homework before they play on the PS5? Who's going to make sure that they have the same maybe religious practices that we do? They're going to go to temple, to mosque, to church, right? And there are family members that we don't trust with $5, let alone to leave money right in their hands to take care of the people that we love, our kids. And so I just use that as an example because it's deeper than just family members are going to step up. For me growing up, I thought that it was my godparents that were going to take care of me if something ever happened to my parents. Newsflash, things that I learned, the state does not care who the godparents are. They care about documentation. So just keep that in mind as well. You have to appoint a guardian. And if you don't, well, then the state is going to choose. And they may choose somebody on paper who maybe looks good on paper, but doesn't have any relationship with your kids or moral value that you do, principles. So just keep that in mind. All right. So the next perception that we have, I don't have anything anyway. I spoke to actually about three people about this earlier today over the phone, folks that had questions about estate planning. And I probably hear this one the most. And so if you have ever said this, heard this, go ahead and put a two in the chat for that, right? And you guys will see. Again, it's not just you, it's not just me. A lot of us have been incorrect about this. I don't have anything anyway. Why do I need to have a will in place? Well, newsflash, your estate is not only monetary. Sometimes when we think about our lives and what has value, we automatically are like, well, I don't have $1 million in a bank account. And so there's nothing for me to pass down. Or we're thinking, I don't have $1 million life insurance policy, right? And so there's nothing for me to pass down. Well, family, your estate is not only monetary, it's not just about the bank accounts or the retirement plans. Your estate is everything that you own. And when our loved ones pass away, think about it for ourselves, especially in this last year that we've been dealing with this pandemic. When we're mourning our loved ones, we're thinking about the things that give us sentimental value, the heirlooms, the photo albums, grandma's earrings, grandpa's watch, right? Because I'm grateful that we've normalized this conversation in my family. Even for me and all of my siblings, with my sisters, we have a joke, right? Yay for dollar jewelry. We are penny pinchers and we like discounts. And so when it comes to not having things of value, we are like, okay, well, who wants the jewelry? It's not real anyway. But again, we're worried and we're concerned about the things that give us sentimental value. I absolutely want the earrings. I want something that's going to make me think of you. I want the sweater, the scarf. So keep that in mind when it comes to estate planning and will preparation. It's not just about the big things, but about the small things as well. Okay. And then the last perception I want to point out to us, and there are many more, but another one that I hear often, and put it to in the chat if you've heard or said this, it's too expensive. It takes too long. Who has that kind of time? Who has that kind of money to get their estate in order or to pay an attorney big bucks to take care of this? And I can understand that. On the low end, it can cost anywhere from $500 to $2,000 to get your will done by itself. That's just your will. And if you guys are like me, I don't have 2 grand sitting under my mattress, right? For things such as this to knock out some paperwork, right? And so I can understand that if I'm trying to pay for groceries, I can wait on knocking out my will. Then I realized, especially when the world was open, I was doing a lot of will workshops live. And I would ask people, well, what's the estimate that you got when you were trying to figure out the cost? And then I realized nobody had an estimate because no one was really asking. Somebody told us it cost us so much money and we ran with it and we have no idea the actual cost. Okay. Um, the amount of time, same thing. We actually don't know how long it takes to get our will done because maybe we didn't step into that space. But I realized even if it is a cost, the people that we love, the moguls, didn't have their will in place, and money was not their issue. I think about the Michael Jacksons and Aretha Franklin's, right? Prince, even Chadwick Boseman, right? Our Black Panther didn't have his will in place. But to really put this into perspective, family, there how much time is too long to protect the people that you care about? How much money is too much, right? Like let me phrase it to you guys this way. If anyone on here, for example, is a parent, would you ever feel comfortable saying, well, $500 is too much to make sure that my kids are good, to make sure that they don't have to go to court for the next 5 years of their life? Like that sounds icky, even for me. But that's the reality. We say like, oh my goodness, it just costs too much. Well, how much is too much to make sure that they're protected? How long is too long? If I said, listen, it's a 3-month process to knock out your will, would you feel comfortable saying, well, 3 months is too long, right? To make sure that they're not in court for 5 years of their life. It sounds a little bit crazy when you put it that way. The good news, the great news is that it doesn't have to take a lot of time at all. And it does not have to break your bank to protect yourselves. And those of you guys, again, that are Legal Shield members, you're familiar with that. And I'm grateful to be able to share that. Our mission is to make sure that we're offering affordable service so that people don't have to break their bank to protect themselves. And so I want to go over some important words. If you guys, um, if you guys already have, or if you registered on Eventbrite, you should have had access to the will questionnaire. I'm going to put it in the chat for anyone that did not register on Eventbrite. I want to make sure that you guys have this. If you are a Legal Shield member, you already have access to your will questionnaire on your app. And for those of you, even if you're not, I want to make sure that you have this as a gift from us, that you have it, because if you decide to get it done through us or not, then I want to make sure that you know what information needs to be included with your will. But I want to go over some important definitions. Your will questionnaire, for those of you guys that see my screen, looks like this. Okay. And on the inside, left and right hand columns, you're going to see some definitions. I'm going to go over some of them that are on the screen, and some words that maybe you guys want to, some words that you guys want to be familiar with, especially if you're going through a probate process right now. Okay. And so important words for us to know. And if you are a note taker, if you're taking stuff down and you miss anything, feel free to just let me know, type it in the chat. I'm happy to go back over some of these words. Okay. So the first word I want to break down for everybody on the line is your estate, because will preparation is part of estate planning. So what exactly is your estate? Why does it matter? Why is it so important? Family, your estate is everything that you own, everything that you own at your passing after the payment of debts and taxes. Okay, it's everything that you own. So it's not just real estate. Your estate is even the clothes on your back, right? Your estate is everything that you own. So keep that in mind. For anyone that's still like, I don't have anything of value. Well, the shirt that you're wearing is part of your estate. Okay. The all the way through to the retirement accounts that you have, also part of your estate. All right. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to break that down when I go through that will questionnaire a little bit later, right? What all of your assets are. The next word I want for us to understand is your will, or your last will and testament. Okay. Your last will and testament also. What exactly is that? Why is it important? Family, your last will and testament is a legal document. And I'm saying legal because technically you can write everything out and it's called your will, but that does not mean that it's valid, which I'll break down. But family, your last will and testament is a legal document, and it provides who is going to receive property. It provides who's going to administer your estate, right? It's also who's going to serve as the guardian of your children if applicable. Okay, if applicable. So if you have kids now, if you will have kids in the future, if you are going to become the guardian of anyone's children, if you have children that maybe are physically or mentally disabled, right? Keep that in mind as well. And so your last will and testament is a legal document. Now, some of you guys asked on Eventbrite, when you guys ask questions, does your will need to be notarized by an attorney? Technically, the short answer is no. You can have a will. I can write everything down on a piece of paper, call it my will, and be done with it. Fun fact about me, because I've seen loss in my family when somebody passed away without a will, I started writing my own will since I was a child. And not because anyone told me, to do it, not because I knew the importance. I just, I saw people in pain. I saw people crying. I saw arguments. I never wanted that. So since I was a kid, I was writing down everything that I had and where I wanted for it to go. I was doing that through adulthood. Little did I know that even with me, labeling A through Z, everything that I had, that if I passed away and that piece of paper made it to the judge would look it over and say, hey, this is great. This is cute, but this is not a valid will, because in New York State, we need to have 2 witnesses, 3 signatures, right, including our own, and it be notarized by an attorney. So the longer answer is yes, you want to have it notarized. And again, every state is different, but the beautiful thing is being able to have access to attorneys so that you can get it done the right way according to the laws in the state that you are in. All right. So just a fun fact. So just keep that in mind. Um, my answer is always going to be yes, have it done by an attorney. All of us that are legal should members, that is part of the service and the plan that we provide. And so you don't have to search and fetch one. They even provide the witnesses for us as well. And I'll go deeper into that in a moment. Okay. The next word I want for us to understand is guardianship. What exactly is guardianship? Why does it matter? Why is it so important? Everyone on here with kids will have kids in the future or maybe become the guardian. Please understand this word and why it's important. Guardianship is when you grant a person authority to care for and make certain decisions for a child. Okay. So you're giving somebody else the power to step in and take care for your children. Now, keep this in mind. By law, we become 18 and technically we are adults. I think it's safe to say, for the most part, at 18, we're not really adults. It sounds good, but majority of us are not taking care of ourselves. And so this is important to understand, not only guardianship, but also power of attorney and people that you are giving access to different portions of your estate, which I'll explain in a minute. But guardianship is a huge deal because these are the people that are going to have access to the finances that you're leaving for your children. Okay. And if you don't appoint someone if you don't appoint a guardian, first of all, the court is going to appoint one instead. First things first. In addition to that, if a child is receiving money at your passing, well, then someone has to be formally appointed to safeguard those funds. And I joke about it all the time, but it's true. There are people that we don't trust with $5, let alone, 10 grand, right? Or 100K that we're leaving to our kids. And so this is that moment where you say, okay, I only want them to have X amount at this age, and how the money is able to be distributed, and whether it's going to college or food and wherever else. So I hope that that's clear. If you guys have questions about that, don't hesitate to type that into the chat if you need me to go into detail at all. But even the money that we leave behind, every state is different in regards to how much, right? What's that sweet spot, that number um, that matters for all of us. What about pets? Thank you for pointing that out. So yes, you also, if you have pets, you're gonna also want to decide who's gonna take care of the pets, if they're gonna go to family members, loved ones, if they're going to be donated, for example, to charity. There are charities that will take in pets when somebody passes away. And so, yes, you also want to decide pet care. Many of us with pets, this is nationwide, consider pets to be part of the family. It's not the same as guardianship, but yes, in your last will and testament, you're able to decide what happens to your pets as well. So thank you for asking that question also. Okay. Now, the next word for us to understand, family, your living will. Your living will. Understand that your living will is a completely separate document from your last will and testament, and they serve two very different purposes. I have people that ask all the time, well, I have a living will, do I need a last will? And vice versa. My answer is absolutely yes. Your living will comes in different names. You may hear it as your advanced healthcare directive. You may hear it as your physician's directive. Okay. All interchangeable. Your living will is also a legal document. Again, pointing out legal. You want to have it done according to the laws in your state. A living will is a legal document that you complete in order to explain your wishes related to medical care. Okay. And this is really powerful. Some of us may be familiar with DNRs, do not resuscitate. That's, you know what, if I don't make it, if my heart stops or anything along those lines, pull the plug, I'm good. Don't try to take me to bring me back. Living will is deeper than just DNRs. Living will is like, listen, if there's a chance that I'm gonna make it, this is how long I want, to be on the machines. I'm okay with, taking whatever doing whatever procedures to keep me here really powerful, especially again, think about the state that we're in. The pandemic came like a wave, and we didn't know, especially considering when it comes to COVID-19, there are so many different symptoms, right? We could have a fever, it could be the flu, it can be a cold, it can be COVID. And so quickly, tables can turn. In the event that you can't speak for yourself, what do you want medical professionals to do? Some of us have different religious practices. For example, there are some faiths that don't believe in blood transfusions, right? So this is your voice while you're here, and maybe you can't speak for yourself, you're incapacitated. Your last will and testament is your voice when you're no longer here. So when we pass away, our living will is null and void. So they serve two very different reasons. And yes, you want to have them all done. We have this idea that we had to wait until we were sick. No, 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 no. That is, do not wait. Please don't wait until you're sick. Um, do it, especially for anyone. You don't have any health conditions, do it now. You have any health condition, do it now, right? You guys may have heard the phrase, we say the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. Second best time to plant a tree is today, right? Right now. I feel the same way about this. Best time to do your living will was 10 years ago. Best time to do your last will was 10 years ago. Second best time to do it is right now, today. Knock it out. Don't wait until you're 88. I don't care if you're 18 or 88. Go ahead and do it if you haven't yet. Same thing goes for your living will, okay? So any questions about that, just let me know. Feel free to type that in the chat. Also, there are requirements for your living will. Signatures, witnesses, every state is different. Typically, the notarizing process is not the same as your last will and testament. It's a simpler process for most states, but again, every state is different. And every state requires for you to have it done according to the state laws. I bring that up because, for example, Florida does not recognize any other state's last will and testament. So for all of my folks who have this beautiful dream of retiring and living their best life in Florida, you're going to want to update it when you move. Okay. For anyone that has moved state to state, you're going to want to update it according to the laws in that state. Okay. Now, power of attorney, also your POA. POA. This is a legal tool. And I say that because of the way that the power of attorney functions. Your power of attorney allows you to delegate another person to make a wide variety of decisions for you. This is you saying, hey, I trust this person to step up, whether I'm incapacitated or not, and make decisions on my behalf. So power of attorney can be separated. You can have, for example, a financial power of attorney. You can have a medical power of attorney, right? They can be two separate people. You can have a general, durable power of attorney. That is somebody who can make decisions in multiple areas of your life. Now, understand this. Everyone that is on here and married will get married, separated, but still legally married, right? I want to talk to you for a moment because sometimes we think that just because we are married, we have access on behalf of our loved ones in places that we actually do not. So I have couples that say, I called the insurance for my spouse, or I tried to speak to the doctor, or I tried to ask about, the retirement or whatever it is. And they're like, they wouldn't tell me anything. My response is always, do you have power of attorney? And the reason for that is because just because you're married, just because you are domestic partners, it does not automatically grant you authority in every area of that person's life. And here's an example. If your spouse, God forbid it ever happen, if your spouse becomes sick and you're trying to cover medical expenses, right? Let's say your spouse has a car. You're like, you know what? I'm going to sell their car in order to pay for their medical expenses. If you do not have power of attorney, you cannot sell their car for them. even if it's for the funds to go to something that they need to have done without power of attorney. That's why even with you and your spouse, you want to be able to have that conversation, or don't have the conversation and put that in place for anybody it is that you trust. Parents, if you have children that are 18 and up, guess what? If your child becomes sick, there, most states, your child's in the hospital, you don't have the power to make certain decisions on their behalf, because at 18 they are adults, which means that the hospital may have more of a say so in what happens to them than you do. So you want to have power of attorney. Now understand, this allows for you to be able to pay medical bills and expenses on that person's behalf. Power of attorney allows for you to pay taxes, apply for Medicaid, um, apply for veterans benefits for that person. It allows for you to set up trust, right? So this is really, really powerful, and we don't talk about it enough. But again, now that we know better, we get to do better. Thank you. I see Miss Hardy put, you also don't want to wait until your parents, your loved ones, or right until they're incapacitated. Thank you so much for pointing that out. Power of attorney for your parents. Keep that in mind. My grandmother, even right now, is challenged with dementia. My grandfather, years ago, he's passed on now, had Alzheimer's. All of these kind of things, and I say that to you guys, and being fully transparent, these kind of medical conditions can sneak up on you, right? And sometimes people deteriorate really quickly. Keep in mind that when they're incapacitated, there are certain things you're not able to handle after that point, right? If they don't have clarity of mind, if they're not in the right state of mind, then they're not able to sign paperwork after the facts. You want to make sure you have these things in place. Thank you so much for pointing that out, Ms. Harden, and stating that. Okay. So don't wait until somebody is incapacitated. You want to do it while you can, while you're healthy. Okay. Now stay there forever. So let me keep this going, family. So healthcare proxy. Another really powerful tool, family, that you want to have in place. Your healthcare proxy is a legal document appointing another person power over your healthcare decisions. So most people choose, and it's specifically medical, okay? Healthcare proxy, most people choose a family member or maybe a trusted friend to speak on your behalf. Um, let me see here. I'm sorry, just want to make sure we're good. Okay. So most people choose a family member or a trusted friend to be healthcare proxy. You get to decide. You can decide as a coworker or whomever. Just make sure it's somebody that you trust to step in. This again is in the event that you can't speak for yourself. There's a person that steps up and says, "Hey, do the surgery. Don't do the surgery." And I've seen the fights ensue. We got, a parent fighting against a child, fighting against whomever. I think they would want this, they would want that. Don't leave it up to loved ones, especially when they're highly emotional. Make the decision. Who do you trust to step up on your behalf? This is, God forbid, you're in a coma, right? This is where healthcare proxies step in. All right. And then probate. What exactly is probate? Now, I always smile when I get to this word, because this was like a dirty word. It was like a curse word in the community, right? Probate. It was like, ah. um, because we were going to court. We were dealing with this long, extraneous probate process. 2 years and 3 years and 5 years in the past. Now I smile because my estate is good and I know my family's not going to have to worry about this. And because we're passing on good information to the people that we love. And so, family, probate is a legal process that happens, believe it or not. Either way, it was a dirty word because we weren't prepared. But now that we're prepared, understand that probate is just the process in which the court is going to determine whether or not your will, if you have one, is valid. Okay. So if you do have a will, you're still going to go to probate. Surprise, surprise. The difference is that the judge, or also known as the surrogate, the court is going to be able to look at the documents and say, oh, Everything is done accordingly. The executor can move forward with administering the estate. We're good to go. That's when probate is a great word. Probate is scary when the judges gets everything and they're like, okay, they wrote everything down, but it wasn't notarized properly. So they're going to move forward as if you don't have one. And then, of course, more times than not, when there is no will and the court now is going to search and they're going to go through family members and what the person had. And, people are dealing with this for years at a time. So, um, someone asked in the chat, what is the difference between healthcare proxy and advanced healthcare directive? Thank you. Let me go back to that for a moment. So, your advanced healthcare directive, your living will, is you stating what you want to have happen. Healthcare proxy is giving someone else authority to step up on your behalf. So my living will is when the doctors say, oh, Katya is saying, you know what, there's a chance for her to live. She'd like to be on the machines, right, for the next 6 months, and we can see what we can do. Healthcare proxy is me saying, you know what, I'm incapacitated. I want my mother to be able to, decide whether or not I stay on the machines, right? Or whether or not they do the surgeries. So healthcare proxy is giving somebody else authority. Living will is you stating what you want to have happen. I, of course, am telling you, you want to have both in place because they serve two different purposes. And the beautiful thing is, if you trust somebody enough, they're going to move according to what you want to have happen anyway. Make the best decisions on behalf of your loved ones that are still here. So two completely different documents. Um, can a healthcare proxy overrule a living will? So this is the moment where I'm going to tell you, you want to speak to your attorney because that's a it depends situation. Okay, in terms of overruling your living will, every state is different, and at what point they look for each document is also different. As an example, in connecting with our law firm in New York, I want to say about now, maybe 2 months ago, and they let us know some updates. The fact that your general durable power of attorney here, that law is changing soon in New York. And we don't get emails about this, right? Things that we don't know. The law is not logical. And so, anyway, I bring that up because in speaking with the attorneys, um, things that I've learned, um, your healthcare proxy, or there are certain documents that you may want to carry with you, right? God forbid there's ever an issue. Healthcare proxy, those kind of things. For example, you're traveling state to state, you want to have documents close enough so that God forbid there's an issue, there's not a search for do they have these things in place, or if you're ever sick and you're going in, so you're not in that moment and the doctors are like, well, you need to sign it now. That's something else I've seen happen to folks where they don't have anything in place. You get to the hospital and they're like, well, you need to decide who's gonna, who can speak for you right now. And you're freaking out or whether or not you're able to make that decision. So that's an independent situation. You want to speak to the attorneys about that. What situation scenarios, which one has more power? Okay. And by the way, there are some decisions clearly like questions like that one. I will tell you, speak to the attorney about it. Okay. um, but feel free, family, please continue to ask any questions that come up. Okay. So with that, some other things that you're going to want to consider as you have this conversation: guardianship. Guardianship. People ask me all the time, well, how do I have that conversation? And yes, you want to have the conversation with the person that you're deciding is going to be guardian of your kids. Okay. And I say that because I don't have any kids, at least not yet. But my younger sister has made it very clear that when the time comes, she does not want any responsibility. Um, and so I bring that up because sometimes we assume family members are going to take on that responsibility, and that's not a light one to take on. And so, do they even want to? Are they willing to take on the responsibility? So, have the conversation with your loved ones about that. The same way you're going to have a conversation about babysitting. Hey, listen, I'm getting some stuff in order. I was thinking about naming you as guardian of my kids. Are you comfortable with that? Can we talk about that in detail? What that means, right? So, have that conversation. Um, Another thing you want to keep in mind, because every state is different. Um, you want to keep in mind that you witnesses, right? Who the witnesses are, the way that it's notarized. Speak to the attorneys. Speak to your attorneys about that. As an example, 18 years old, you're an adult. You can't have witnesses that are under the age of 18. Some families I've spoken to, they want to have their kids involved in this conversation and they want them to be a part. But if you have your 16-year-old child as one of your witnesses, your will can be deemed, your will be deemed invalid. The witnesses have to be above the age of 18. Um, Also, keep in mind that um, there's a hierarchy in every state. So I mentioned to you guys in New York, half of everything you have automatically is going to go to your spouse if you don't have a will in place. And keep your eyes on the screen. If you're with your spouse, again, the state does not care if you like your spouse, don't like your spouse, how long y'all been together, the last fight you had, the state does not care. Okay. So if you guys have the conversation, you say, you know what, we want everything to go to the kids, does not matter if it's not documented. You and your spouse need to have two separate wills, right? Fun fact, it's not one will per spouse, two separate wills. And if you are married, even if you have been separated for, years, if you are legally married, you are still considered married. And if there's not a will in place, your spouse who you no longer like or whomever is still going to have access to your things. You want to be able to update your will. If you are married and you decide that that spouse is going to receive whatever portions of your estate, you guys divorce and you remarry. If you do not update your will, guess what? Your ex spouse will still have access to your things. I've seen that happen as well, where the new spouse and new children, right? The children that are in that next marriage receive nothing because the will was not updated. That's why it's also important for you to be able to update your will as time goes on. All right. So just some other things. Oh, and then I did also get a question on Eventbrite about um, life insurance. Life insurance policy is not a will. They are two separate documents. Yes, I encourage you to have a life insurance policy. No, I am not a life insurance agent. We do not provide life insurance, but yes, I would encourage you, if you do not have any life insurance, to have a policy in place. But please understand that your life insurance, whether you got it for funeral expenses, for financial reasons, your life insurance pays out a death benefit, excuse me, to your beneficiaries. Um, it does not cover every portion of your estate. And so the money's with your policy, fantastic. Maybe you have a policy in place for your kids that are going to be paid out, or your spouse or loved ones or whomever. That's not, that does not have anything to do with your home or things along those lines. So understand they're two very different documents. And the same thing comes in place, I want to mention, for your trust. For anyone on here that's interested in getting a trust, yes, I would advocate that as well. Your trust, also known as a living trust, an irrevocable living trust, uh, it creates a separate entity outside of yourself. Okay. So some people are encouraged or like the idea of being able to place, for example, um, oh my goodness, a deed, right? Their home, paperwork to their home into a trust, and then you can pass the entire trust on. Fantastic. Attorneys typically what may suggest it depending on the value of the assets that you have. Fantastic. But that does not mean, oh my goodness, you shouldn't have a will in place. They work together the same way that life insurance works with you having a living will as well. Okay. Um, Thank you so much, Ms. Harden, for adding value. I see that you're referring to what Adria said, and I apologize if I'm saying that incorrectly, your name incorrectly, but in the chat as well. The proxy is identifying who's going to make decisions for you, right? And your living will is you deciding what decisions what you want to have had made on your behalf. Okay. So, just some fun facts about that. If anyone that's interested in getting a trust done, yes, our attorneys will do that for you as well, at a discounted price. I'm more than happy to go into detail about that if you have further questions about it, or whomever invited you to this workshop can give you details about that. Okay. So, before I break down the will questionnaire for everyone on here and the information that you need to include, I want for everyone to know that our services make it so that you can get your living will power of attorney, your last will and testament all completed. And that's in addition to a range of things that our membership provide for our members. Um, Oh, thank you. There's an insurance. See, all joint supply. We have an insurance agent on the line from IC Travis Hike. I hope that I said that correctly. So from what I see, you got shouted out. I see you making the face. You were surprised, which I see. We found out your business. So thank you. We have an insurance agent on the line. Okay. So if y'all looking for resources, we got him here. Okay. Things that I want for you guys to understand. What we do with Legal Shield is that we provide services that the wealthy in our nation have had for years that they were able to cover on their own. We make sure that regardless of your income, regardless of where you live, you're able to have the same access. Because for a very long time, the average household couldn't afford to have access to attorneys. And so what we do is we say, hey, listen, what if we're able to provide you with your estate planning documents, but also unlimited access to attorneys, get your questions answered from A to Z, regardless of what area of law they fall under, for a small monthly rate, right? So we're able to say for less than $25 a month, now you have your own attorneys at your disposal. And just so you guys understand what you have access to, our services, we provide them in real time. This is our app, and you're able to tap, call, and have equal access. So all of our law firms, just so that you guys are familiar, are AV rated. We don't work with anyone, and we contract specific law firms. So I don't want anyone to be on here and think like, okay, you're going to get random people. For example, our law firm in New York, we've been working with them for 20 plus years. Okay. And so first thing you're going to have access to is unlimited legal advice. What that looks like in regards to estate planning. My best friend and her mother have had access to this service for almost 20 years now. So, what that looked like for her when she moved from New York to North Carolina and was updating her information, she called into the law firm and said, hey, listen, if I decide to get remarried, will my daughter get the home, right? Home that I've purchased, will she have access to that? And the law firm was able to say, hey, by the way, no, she won't. Your new spouse and his kids would have access to the home before your daughter would. These are things that we don't know on our own. Lawyers go to school for a long time. We respect them and we want to be able to use the knowledge that they have. And so that's the benefit of being able to have access to the law firm Monday through Friday and ask any questions. And then the world that we live in right now, what about questions about employment? What about, the severance packages? What about, maybe if you felt like you were let go from your job unlawfully? I'll give you guys an example of that. My father, who's been with his company for years, they tried to bully him. Into leaving his job when the pandemic started. When he said, I'm uncomfortable, my father does repairs, said, I'm uncomfortable with going into people's homes. We don't have the right protective gear. And they tried to force him to resign. He was able to call the law firm and they said, nope, they're unable to do that. Here are your options. Here's what we're going to do instead. So it's important just to be able to have your navigation system for everyday matters. Okay. And then when you need a little bit of extra legal muscle, right? I call this the big brother on the playground. Our attorneys will write letters for us and make phone calls on our behalf as well. And so, in any situation where you feel like it's the big guy against the little guy, whether it is, for a lease agreement, right? Maybe it's landlord, maybe it's a store that you should have gotten a refund for, whatever that is, call in and find out what your options are. I had a friend of mine that used this for her apartment. She moved in, sent in her documents, and the attorneys were able to speak up for her and say, hey, listen, there's a $500 difference between your lease agreement and the welcome letter. We're here to let you know you actually don't have to pay that as per, state law. So it's a wide range of options that you're going to be able to have and services that you'll be able to use all the way through to IRS audit, civil trial defense, hours that we have booked in so that you're always going to be protected. And then my favorite portion of our service, in addition to that will prep that we offer, is 24/7 emergency access. And the reason for that is because I think I can say there's no one on here that ever woke up in the morning and said, today's the day. I hope I have an emergency, right? That just it doesn't happen that way, right? And so bad things happen to good people all the time. And when you're in a scenario where you feel like your rights are being threatened, you're being questioned, possibly detained, maybe dealing with law enforcement, this is where that 24/7 emergency access button is a game changer. It's peace of mind for you and for your household. And I say that for me because I'm a young Black woman. I travel by myself all the time. And I'm not saying that police are bad, but I've definitely been in scenarios where the blue lights kind of come on and, the hairs on the back of my neck have stood up because you don't know what the interaction is going to be. And so this 24/7 emergency access button has added so much value for me, for my loved ones. This was a non negotiable for the people that I care about. And so I love the fact that this is a part of our plan for you, for your kids, for your spouse as well. Okay. And then, in addition to that, as if that's not enough, we also offer moving violation assistance, which means if you get a ticket, send it in. The attorneys are going to consult with you. And if it's worth fighting, they'll even go to court on your behalf and fight the ticket for you. Um, so, I already shared with you guys our service and our membership is less than $25 a month. And some of you guys can go through your current expenses. You think about your Spotify, your Netflix, or whatever else, and it's a joke, right? In comparison to the places that we're already spending money. But for anyone that's ever like, I need help to budget this in, we even help to offset your normal expenses so that you don't have to choose between protecting your loved ones and making sure that your bills and everything are paid. So member perks is automatically a part of your service and your plan. For anyone on here that is a Legal Shield member, if you have not tapped into your member perks, I would encourage you to do that. This is my best friend. I don't go into a store without seeing what discounts I can save. And the goal is for us to be able to offset. If you're saving $50, $100, clearly you're not thinking about 25, right, for your personal plan. Okay. And so thank you, Mr. Hyde. I see that you put your information in the chat. So life insurance, I told you guys I encourage it. All right, take advantage, screenshot, take his information down. Um, get your will in place. Also get your life insurance policy in place. Okay. So now I want to break down for you guys what information it is that you need to have included when you're getting these documents in order. Okay. And so I showed you guys our app already. There are two ways for all of you that are members or will become members that you're going to be able to access your will questionnaire. The first way is on your actual app. You're going to go to Easy Complete Will Questionnaires, click on estate planning, go to your will questionnaire, fill everything out. It saves your answers on the app. So it's not like, oh my goodness, you have to kind of go back and forth or do it all in one sit down, right? Because there are different portions to this. So you're going to be able to do it electronically, or for all of you that are paper people, I am as well. That will questionnaire that you guys received on through the link, all of you guys as members will have access to it, in your back office as well. You can do it on paper and then mail it in to our law firm. Okay, so what are the first things that you're going to want to include when you're getting your will done? Of course, your general information. Your general information. That's your name. That is your address, right? Where you live. That is your date of birth. Though that kind of information, the stuff that we can answer in our sleep. To be fully honest, if you've ever gone by any names different than what you're going by now, right? Maybe you're married now and changed your name. You're going to put that information down first. You want the attorneys to be able to kind of go through anything that pertains to you. So if there's a prior name that you had, right? Things that maybe were associated with that name, if you go by different names in different places in your life, okay? Your general information is first and foremost. The next thing that you want to include is your spouse's information. Now, family, you and your spouse, again, need two separate wills. So keep that in mind. All right. And in addition to that, you want to include all of your spouse's information, both of you will. So that's their date of birth. That's when you were married. That's any agreements that you guys have in place. And it's extremely detailed in the will questionnaire. As you guys go through it, page by page, you guys will see the different questions that they ask. If you were ever previously married, any agreements that were in place, prenuptial, postnuptial agreements, things like that. So you want to label all of that in great detail. And then once you finish your spouse's information, okay, then family, you're going to also break down your dependents as well. So I mentioned to you guys, your dependents, of course, are children under the age of 17. They're also any children that you have that are mentally or physically disabled, that you care for, as well. You're going to put in their names, their date of birth. If you have any grandchildren, their information, guardianship, who do you trust to take care of your child? Uh, Also, disinheritance. Your will is for who is going to receive, but it's also for who's not going to receive. Understand that your estate can be contested. That means people can fight your estate. If there is no will, clearly it's a lot easier. Folks kind of come up out of the woodworks. I had that conversation with someone earlier who was saying, her mother passed away, and the family members kind of came out the woodworks, and people are looking and they're fighting for money and all kinds of things. Um, and so your will is to say, hey, listen, I want Jane Doe to get the car. I want John Doe to get $0.00. Also, keep in mind, every state is different. As an example, in North Carolina, you have to decide that, this person is going to get at least $1, literally, right? Every state is different. And it may sound silly, but again, the law is not logical, it's legal. That's why it's important for you guys to do it according to the laws of descent where you live. All right. And again, as you go through that will questionnaire, it'll break it down for you in greater detail. Who are the people in your life that maybe are special needs, or who is it that you've disowned in your family as well. Okay. Um, and then after that, your assets. Your assets, family, are real estate. Your assets are motor vehicles, retirement plans. You're labeling this as well. 401ks, IRAs, pensions. You're labeling that. Now, let me make sure that this is clear. Typically, for retirement plans and things like that, typically you're naming beneficiaries. This is important. This is extremely important because, again, updates, having legal advice on what it looks like, who's going to get, who you name as beneficiaries, whether it's direct on policies or if you didn't name. And this is the reason why it's important to label everything so that you can go through that with the attorneys as well. Because like I mentioned to you, you are married, remarry, you don't make an update to that, right? So the person that maybe you wanted to have access in the past is not the person you want right now. So label everything. Life insurance policies, you're going to just document that as well so that the attorneys are aware of what you have. And then investments and banking, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, CDs, things that are popular now, Forex and Bitcoin and whatever it is that you have. Label everything. If you have joint ownership, you can label that in that will questionnaire as well. Anything that you own outright, joint ownership, maybe you have business partners and ownership or shares of different things. You're going to be able to document all of that. The attorneys are going to be able to go over with you who's going to get, who is going to be passed to first, and those kind of things. Okay. And then outside of that, family, your end of life request. All right. Your end of life request. And I know I went over a little bit. Sorry about that, but I promise we'll be done in the next 5 minutes or less. But your end of life requests, things that are possible in 2021, you can be buried, you can be cremated, you can become a tree. Okay. What do you want to have happen to you? You can label that information as well, make it plain and clear for your loved ones so that they understand, right? The treatments of your remains, pet care. Someone asked about that earlier. Is there a loved one you want to be responsible for your children? For your children, excuse me, for your pet. Do you want them to be donated to charity? Your social media accounts. Do you want them to get shut down? Do you want the information to be archived? Things that have happened. Identity theft crime runs rampant. I've seen it in real time where someone passes away. They didn't designate anything to happen to the social media account, so it stays up. 3 years later, somebody hacks the account. Now they're sending messages to your loved ones and you're no longer here, right? So just keep that in mind. Social media, we weren't talking about that, 5, 10, 20 years ago. It's important to label that as well. And if you're curious about identity theft, we do have services for that as well. So get back with the person that invited you and we can give you information on that also. Okay. So your end of life request, that's the last thing that you're going to break down in your will questionnaire. And then after that, you're done. If you're doing it electronically, you can submit it. They're going to receive it easily through your app. They'll get it. And then if you're doing it on paper, You're going to find out. You can call in and say, hey, where do I send it? What's the address? You're going to mail it in. When our law firms get the information, they are going to dot the I's and cross the T's by speaking to you. They're going to call and say, hey, Travis, hey, Adria, hey, right, Sylvia, and whomever else, and they're going to say, we got your will questionnaire. Is this truly what you wanted? Do you, this person as the executor, those kind of things, answer any questions that you have. Then they're going to go about drawing up the documents. Our attorneys do it really quick, usually between 5 to 10 business days. Then they're going to mail it to your door. Once you get it, read through it. There are instructions on it, right? Don't take out the staples, things like that. Surprise, will make your will invalid. So don't take out staples, stuff like that. Read through it, make your will appointment, and you're going to be able to finalize with the correct signatures. And the attorneys will provide that for you also. All right. And then family, literally, it's just that simple and it's that easy. There's a pandemic that we're still living through. And so, yes, virtual signings are a thing and they're making that possible. So um, we have an incredible home office that's available. If you have issues with your app, you're going to have access to that number. If you become a member, those of you that are members already have access to that information. And that's the nitty gritty. I'm excited. I'm grateful that you guys were able to hop on and join us for this last hour to go through this information and ask your questions. I pray that the information I shared with you guys was beneficial and you guys can take this information and protect the people that you guys love. That's my contact information. If you have any questions at all, comments, any feedback, I would love to hear from you because this has become a passion project of mine to protect my community. And so all feedback is appreciated. If there's anything that you guys would like to say before we close out, let me make sure that you guys are able to unmute. But if there's anything you guys would like to say or any other questions, feel free to ask now, unmute your line or type it in the chat. Otherwise, thank you guys for being here. Oh, I hear somebody unmuted.
Hey there. Great presentation, Ms. Joseph. So very informative. And thank you to everyone who came out that I invited. So,
Ms. Harden, you are an absolute powerhouse. And I appreciate you for sharing the good news because you protect so many households. So thank you for being here. And if anybody's connected to Ms. Harden, you're connected to the best. Let me just make that plain and clear. Okay?
Thank you.
So thank you for being here. Anyone else? Any questions, comments, concerns? Going once, going twice. All right, beautiful people. Well, thank you guys again. I'm excited to hear all of the good news and how easy the process was for all of you and your households. And I'm happy. Thank you guys. I'm happy that it was informative. I look forward to hearing the praise reports and the stories later. And without further ado, enjoy the rest of your day. Get protected. And I'll talk to you guys soon.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Bye, family.